Hey everyone, there's a term that I use of late, unfortunately more often, called techno-racism. And I realized in search that techno-racism does not have a formal definition. In fact, the only, if you will, stab taken at providing a definition for techno-racism was in the Urban Dictionary in 2014. So, based on a combination of my personal experience and what others have written, here is the simple definition of techno-racism. It is any technical device or software or online creation that either intentionally or unintentionally excludes or leads to a series of actions that harms someone of a particular race. And in the instances where techno-racism has been applied, the person on the receiving end of the harm has always been African American. In the case of the 2014 Urban Dictionary definition, it referred to people at airports who were misidentified as criminals who were black because the system was designed to match a person's face who happened to be black with a database that included black photographs, and the software wasn't sophisticated enough to determine that the innocent black person at the airport wasn't the person in the database. So the person innocent at the airport who's black was misidentified. That's one example. Another one comes from my personal experience with Google Plus, when Bradley Horowitz, the person who designed the Google Plus suggested user list, designed the list in such a way that if you were white, as long as you had some name of note, you could be anyone from a playwright to a musician to an actor to a head of state or politician to a person famous for doing a thing. But if you were black, you were either an athlete or an entertainer, and that was it. And that's something that I identified, and it was noted in the publication called Valleywag. And another incident that happened to me was I was on CNN YouTube Democratic debates, and Keith Seeley, who then wrote for the New York Times, instead of identifying me as Xenophon Abraham, the YouTube partner who created the YouTube, one of the, or set of the YouTube sample videos for the YouTube CNN Democratic debates, she just called me a black man, but wrote as if there was two African American men in consecutive paragraphs in the digital publication for the New York Times. And I point out digital because that's where it occurred, and also because a digital error of that type is very easy to fix, but it was never done. But it led to me being excluded, except that Valleywag, again, the tech blog for Silicon Valley, that was part of the Gawker Media ownership brand, made fun of what Seeley New York Times did and lampooned it as a racist pose. So, another one is an engineer who works for a firm that may not want African Americans to be using the platform, and so they put in gates that ask for example, a credit card, even though having a credit card wasn't necessary to actually use the particular software as a service. But having a credit card is something that if you're particularly young and African American, you're less likely to have than someone white. Another example, I'm going to use a number of them, are sign-up sheets that ask for your background record. And knowing that African Americans are far more likely, particularly if they're male of a certain age bracket, to have a criminal record. those forms should not ask about misdemeanor offenses, but some do. That is racism. That is also illegal in a number of states, like, for example, California. It is also illegal with respect to, I believe now, the federal government. So there are other examples, and I'm sure you can think of them as well. But that is techno-racism. And again, some of you would say, wait a minute, that's really a news media publication, but it is in a technical environment. In the case that I present to you, a digital environment. And so this has become more of a concern. Lately, I point out, for example, that in my case, if one, until yesterday, typed Zinni Abraham, Democratic National Convention 2008 blogger, on Google, there was no mention of the fact that I was one of the first 124 bloggers ever invited to cover the Democratic National Convention. But if you went to Bing and you typed the same search keywords, you would know that. Now, why is Google structured in that way? Guess what? It's not anymore, because I use my own platform to fix the situation. Again, I can go on and on and on with numerous examples, but they all add up to one thing: techno-racism. That's techno-racism. Subscribe to Zinni62 on YouTube and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com.